Welcome, guys. Welcome to our 12th monthly meeting of the UK MTB Trail Alliance. So we've been doing this for a whole year. Doesn't time fly when we're having fun, right? In a minute, I'll hand over to Burlish Bike Park's Hannah Escott, and she'll talk us through her 3-year journey to save her local jump spot and turn it into an official bike park, from starting from scratch to going on to raise over 250k in funding, securing planning permission, through to the build process, the opening, and how the park has evolved since. And hopefully we'll get a feel for the highs and the lows of her experience. After a Q&A session with Hannah, we'll then open the floor to a wider discussion, giving us all a chance to share anything that we need help or advice with, and also to whatever else people would like to talk about. And perhaps we pick up the conversation we were just having a second ago, which those of you watching on YouTube won't have heard. But before we start, a bit of housekeeping. If you could use the little hands up icon at the bottom of the screen, so I know you want to speak, that would be great. And I'll call people in turn when it gets to the Q&A. And then when asking your question, please say who you are and what group you're from, just so we all know who each other is. And can I ask that you please leave your video on during the call, but so everyone can see each other, but be on mute so we don't hear you. And also, please, if you could change your display name to include the organisation you represent. For example, you can see mine is Robin Grant, UK MTB Trail Alliance. So having said all that, I will hand over to Hannah.
Hello, good evening, everybody. I'm really excited to be here on a super dreary, miserable evening. So yeah, Burlish Bike Park. If you haven't been, get yourself over. It is super fun and absolutely buzzing. But it has been quite a rocky, torrid road to get to where we are today. Some things were brilliant and that we already kind of had in my lap already, ready to go. Other things have been a nightmare. So I'll get into it. So Burlish Bike Park, it used to be Burlish Dirt Jumps. So it's been a dirt jump spot for over 30 years. Like, it had some sort of little BMX track in it. And there's newspaper articles that have come out of the 1980s of the kids that are riding there back then. Obviously now they're adults that have been helping out too. And it peaked in the 90s. Like, it was a real sort of banger of a venue. Loads of professional riders coming through. And yeah, there were loads of videos, photos at the time. It even had a BMX frame made after it. So yeah, it was a place to be. But obviously generations have moved on, grown up, and then the newer generations came through. And I guess they were more into riding and not so much into digging. So it kind of went into disrepair. But there was still a happy sight that a lot of the local kids enjoyed doing. You know, there are a few dozen kids that still rode and dug there. But it wasn't what it was in the 90s, from what I hear. I was just a child. But how did it become Burlish Bike Park? Well, in 2020, there was an unfortunate accident during COVID where a young man had to get helicoptered off and was in a coma. He is absolutely fine now. He's back riding and is growing up, having a great time. But that's how the landowner actually found out that he owned the land. So it was left over from when the housing estate got built. And he didn't even know it was his. He's moved on to industrial development. It's got nothing to do with housing anymore. And he went to visit it after hearing about this accident and was like, wow, this is huge. These jumps are huge. There's trees everywhere. At some point, more accidents are going to happen. But he was a bit of a top banana guy, because he got in touch with me, having found my charity, and was like, well, you're clearly doing a lot of good in the community. You're clearly around bikes. Do you want my woodland? And I thought, hang on a minute, what? You want to give me your woodland? Like, you want to give me Burlish? Obviously, I rode there a lot as well. I knew exactly what he's talking about. And he says, yeah, either you turn it into a community facility or I've got to bulldoze it. And I say he's a top guy because he didn't bulldoze it straight away. Like, he wanted somebody to make it something so that the kids and future generations can enjoy it as well. And I thought, yeah, crack on, brilliant. I'll have it up and running in 4 months, easy. And I said to him, I said, right, I can do funding because I've run a charity for 4 years. So I know how to write funding applications. It says, but I've got zero clue about planning permission. Like, I don't even know where to start. And he said, yeah, no problem. I'll give you 2 planning advisors pro bono, and they'll help you out. They'll talk you through it. And that's where I mean that I already had quite a lot of good stuff in my lap in terms of I knew how to raise funds. I already had a constituted organisation with 4 years of accounts, which for anybody that's tried to make an organisation and get any funding knows that is your fundamental bread and butter of what you need. And then when you said you can got people that help with planning and dealing with all the paperwork, absolutely brilliant. Like, what a gift horse. I've been given land, I've been given advisors, and I've got some pre-existing knowledge of pre-existing organisation to make this work. And then a lot happened. So the planning advisors came to visit the site, and I was like, look, I've got to write a budget, I've got to put in a timeline, what do I do? And so they came to visit, they told me all about it, and then I was introduced to what I've got to do for ecology and arboriculture, which is trees, archaeology, because the site was a World War II hospital back in the day. Biodiversity net gain, that was massive. You've not come across that yet. I'll get into that in a minute. Highways, that's a scary man. I'll get into that as well. And what you do with a neighbourhood and the parish councils and all these people that have got to approve this application. So it got to really intense, scary stuff. And the planning advisors were like, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to learn about this. Like, this is a really good opportunity. So leave it with me. I'll write up what I can and I'll give it to you. And then if you can check it over, that'd be great. So they wrote the pre-planning, and then I went into the full planning application. And yeah, I tried to avoid using consultants wherever I could because it's expensive. So I ended up reading all about local planning policy framework and all the laws and the rules and regs and the local town plan, and meeting up with all the people on the town and the district and the county council that I needed to. And I tried to write up as many reports as I could by myself, because you've got all these fancy like architect reports, and fundamentally it's a picture of a table and a gap and a drop and explaining what they are. And I'm pretty sure we could all do that. So that was great. And it's the first time in my life where I've actually been like, I'm so glad I went to university, because I had architect friends that I could be like, can you just sign this off for me? And it's the first time I had to sit down and write. Like, I think I totaled it up that in my computer, I've got like over 250,000 words dedicated to Burlish, and just multiple thousands of pages and drawings and diagrams. And it was a mind-blowing journey, but what an education. So more on the planning side, ecology was massive because it's a deciduous woodland. It is a really, really poor quality deciduous woodland. Like, there's 5 species in it. They're all really tall. There's no light coming through. It's got very limited biodiversity, but it's still a woodland. And I think it's stunning, even though ecologically it's horrible. It's my beautiful woodland, and it's fab. Then the arboriculture was a case of, you've not got any veteran trees. We've only a couple of trees to protect in terms of their root protection zone. But then came biodiversity net gain, and this is, oh God, it's just a ball breaker to deal with, to be honest. In terms of when we first applied for it, it was aspirational, but now it is law. So you've got to be able to get 10% biodiversity net gain. And if you can't do that on site, you've got to buy parcels of land off site. And they start at about £20,000, and one parcel ain't going to be enough. So fortunately, we were building during aspirational stage. So we didn't need to get 10%. We could set up a 3.5%. But that has massively limited what we can actually do. And if you've been to Burlish, you'll notice it's really small, but there's all this woodland around it, and it's got so much more potential for building. But we can't build on it because the badgers and the foxes and the birds have got way more rights to that land than what we have. And that's still a bugbear today, which I'll get into more of. On the funding front, which I'm sure lots of us have had challenges with, again, what was handed to me was that it was the World Championships in Glasgow. And with the World Champs in Glasgow came the Sport England and British Cycling Places to Ride Fund, which I'm sure many of you have come across before and have benefited from as well. And I'm sure there's a few of you that are also thinking, oh my God, why did we not do that? I wish we'd have been here a couple of years before and we'd have had access to that funding, because it was mega. And we got £110,000 out of that on our first application. Now, the application was tough. Like, it was, they wanted 5 and 10 year development plans, financial forecasts, loads of stuff went into this application. They wanted the planning permission in there. And we were really lucky that at that time, Open Trail, which is the name of my charity, which is the charity that owns Burlish Bike Park, the one that I set up in 2016, we did £20,000 a year, which in the grand scheme of things isn't a lot of money. And our first application went in for 110,000. And generally, grant bodies will only give you up to 20% of your total annual revenue. And they gave us 500%. And that was in 2020 when you had 110,000. And then obviously when you go into 21, 22, everything went up in price. So I was battling for more and more money. Like our original budget was going to fit into £110,000. That was it. We got that one grant for Sport England. We were good to go, but we were not. The total project build was 290,000, and I did manage to raise 280,000. So places to ride was a big one. So we started up 110, that went up to 140 in the end because I had to keep topping it up. I think quite a lot of projects coming to the end of place to ride in 22, 23 ended up doing that as well. I mean, you've seen it all on grand designs. Everything goes over budget and takes way longer than you think it's going to take. So after Place to Ride came in the crowdfunders. So we did our crowdfunders through crowdfunder.co.uk, which is a really good one to do crowdfunders through because there's match funding available through it. And Sport England, a big part of that as well. So we had places and spaces funding through match funding, which meant that when we raised £10,000, they matched it with another £10,000. So our crowdfunders, we did two in the end because we did the one in 2020 and then another one in 2022. So the first one was, let's build a bike park in Stourport. Let's see if we can do it. And then the second one was, oh my God, everything's got really expensive. Let's get some more money so we can actually make it happen now that we've got all the planning permission. We know we can actually do it. So we managed to raise about £60,000 through crowdfunding, which was mega. And it was a really good way of not only raising money, but raising our profile, because it meant that other local businesses kind of went, this is actually a really good idea and we want to give to this. And it meant that the newspapers got involved and the radio stations got involved. And it was a really good way of saying, look, we are here. And it just made more people aware of what we were trying to achieve and what was coming to the town. So alongside the crowdfunder Place to Ride, we got some, and the local businesses that got involved, we got some really good support from the industry as well. So we got £3,000 out of Shroudby Tyres, £1,000 from Mudhugger, Mudguards. So yeah, big up to these guys that were coming in from the industry. And then, yeah, we got, again, being a charity and having like 4 years of charity accounts and all the impact that we've made through the work that we do at schools, etc. We were open to various trust funds as well. We're quite appealing to them because Open Trail as a charity, we're all about raising the resilience, the independence and the aspirations of local young kids. And we're in quite a poor area, as in the housing estate within a 5-minute bike ride is in the top 5% poorest in the UK. So we kind of had some really good figures on that to get, you know, to help out the young kids. So we got another 100,000 from trust funds, which included Walsall Foundation and Severn Trent Water. So yeah, that pretty much, along with a few other trust funds that were like 3 and 5 grand, 2 grand, 500 quid here and there, really good. And obviously being a charity, we could claim gift aid on our crowdfunder, but the VAT did really cook us in the teeth. We could there was no choice. We had to pay VAT on everything. So that was, you know, 20% of our costs was pure VAT. Yes. So crowdfunding, if you fancy doing it, it is amazing, but it is an absolute epic task. Especially going, as much as crowdfunding was great for the match funding with Sport England, they wanted so many add-ons, like you've got to make a video, which wasn't so bad, but then you've got to give out free stuff like stickers and lanyards. And I remember sitting in the junction just before where the bike park is, and I've got Western Power putting in electrics, I've got Severn Trent Water putting in the water, and I've got Kai Forte and the Forte Trailskates team building the bike tracks. I'm talking to the shipping containers that are arriving, and then Sport England are like, can you design up some stickers and some lanyards to put in your crowdfunder? And it's just like, yeah, just another job on the list of things to do when you're already running around doing 16-hour days and you've got neighbours complaining because you're going to put in a road closure and some temporary traffic lights. So, but it is, yeah, crack on. Let's do it. And So alongside all of this, I had no prior knowledge, as I said, about planning permissions. I had no prior knowledge about electric, about toilets and putting in water connections and wastewater connections. And then on top of all of that is highways. Now, highways is a nightmare. So we had to connect up to the main road network. And originally, in like version 6 of my highway plan, we were going to drop the curb and off you go. And then the highway inspector arrived, who is the scariest man in the world. And he rocked up and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, we're dropping the curb." And firstly, it was the first time I experienced any kind of sexism in my whole development. Like, all the consultants never looked at me as this little blonde woman. If everyone's not met me, I'm 4'11". And this was the first time this man would speak to my highways consultant engineer, but wouldn't speak to me. And he basically says, "You've got to put in a full bell mouth highways specific junction where you can get 2 London double decker buses down it." And I'm there going, it's a woodland car park. It's made of type 1 stone and there's trees in it. Like, when are we going to get 2 double decker buses in this car park? So it's a nightmare. But we had to do it. And so that junction went from being a £10,000 junction to a £60,000 junction. Fortunately, we had a massive local company who work all over Europe, and they were willing to foot the bill for this junction. Like, they approached me in the February, we opened up in the July, and they said, "How can we help you?" And I said, "Look, I've already given the car park contract to somebody. I don't want to take it off them. That'd be really rude." I said, "But I haven't got anybody to do the junction." So they were incredible in that when I said, "Look, the goalposts have massively moved. What can we do?" And they just said, "We carry on." It says, "Open trail will pay us nothing. We'll get more men in, more material in, and we will carry on." And this was such a massive weight off the entire project shoulders, because this would have delayed us till December, because I'd have to go and raise another £50,000 and find another contract to do this, to deliver this junction. So yeah, Highwayman, he was my Halloween costume because he's that scary. So the actual building of it was incredible. Like, having Forte trailscapes in and making this vision come true was unbelievable. Yes, it was 16-hour days. Yes, it was juggling an awful lot of work. But seeing this vision that I've been working on for 2 years actually come to life, and it was nice that I kind of worked out that I would design it and say, "Look, this is what I want, but you're the experts, you're the trail builders. You know what you're doing. So this is the idea. But if I say I want a run of 10 tables and you think it's better to fit in 8, then fit in 8. And they had explained to me that they did in previous projects where somebody had drawn up the plans and they said, "These plans won't work. What you're going to create is going to be rubbish and no one's going to want to use it." And the local authority says, "That's a drawing, you build to that drawing." And I'm sure we've all experienced it. Trail builders should not be treated like idiots. They know what they're doing and they're very experienced. And yes, I was there on site every day, making sure that what I wanted was coming true and questioning certain things and managing the project as much as I could in terms of, like, I'm not sure about that takeoff. I'm not sure about that landing. What's going on there? And then having them justify it, or me saying, "Oh, I'd rather have that change, to be honest," and they're making it work in that respect. So I definitely recommend giving the trail builders free rein and trusting their expertise, but also questioning where you need some sort of clarification or where you're not sure if that's actually meeting up to what your vision is. Oh God. And then, so it's not just the jumps. For anybody who's not been up there, we've got a cafe and a toilet block and a car park as well. And so while the jumps are being built, that all happened. And then it was like, right, now we've got to move into the infrastructure basis. Because my idea was that as much as riding your bikes is brilliant, I almost built it from a mom's perspective and thought, right, I want our toilet block to be a nice toilet block. I don't want it to smell really bad. I want it to be a nice place to go. And I want a little cafe where you can sit and be warm and have a coffee. And if you bring a picnic, you can bring your picnic in the cafe. I'm not bothered. Like, this is a family community facility. Come and use it as a family community facility. And that's what people have been doing. And I think we've had way more kids and families come in, because being really, really stereotypical, there's a place for mom to sit and have a coffee. And when the kids come in and it's cold and wet, they're still there in the winter, because they can put their gloves down and they can warm them up again, and they can sit and have a drink and relax, as well as going and riding their bike. And as stereotypical as it is saying that mom's drinking the coffee, the moms are more likely to ride their bike. And those that said, we are not going to ride, are now riding because the environment is suiting them. And that's been massive. And in our membership pricing plan, basically it's £30 for an adult to join and 20 quid for a kid to join. So we've kept it as low cost as we can. And then it's 50 quid for family of 4. Because again, stereotypically, lad and dad will ride the bike and then mother and daughter won't. So in that pricing structure, we've embedded in that stereotypically mom and daughter then get to ride for free, and they're more likely to do it because it's not costing them any money. So yeah, everything's kind of had a reason behind it. But yeah, so we opened it up in July 23, 2 weeks after when it was 2 years after when I wanted to. When I initially got the bike park, got the Woodland, I was like, give me 4 months. Then I learnt a lot. But yeah, so July 23 we opened. We weren't ready to open. Like, the electricians were there the first weekend still putting in the lighting, and we had a massive pile of rubbish that we had to get rid of. But we were just ready, we were just like, look, we've kept these kids off these jumps all this time. The cafe's in there, the power's in there, let's go. I mean, the toilet block was ridiculous because there were 3 toilets and no cubicles. So it was quite a weird room to go into at that time. And it's weird to go back to thinking about it and then thinking how far we've come on now. But where are we going next? Again, biodiversity net gain is a massive, massive issue. So I really want to put in another trail and a couple of mulch jumps. It's always going to be a small jump based site because that's what the land lends itself to be. But I want to put in a couple more tracks, and this biodiversity net gain thing is a nightmare because now it's law. When we first applied, it was aspirational, but now we've got to get this 10% gain. So, and it doesn't matter whether you're building a housing estate or a trail in the woodland, you've still got to get 10%. So we're trying our best to work around it and work with it. We've got solar panels on the roof. We've got to make these solar panels so they're bat friendly, so that the bats can live under the solar panels. That's the extent to which it's kind of getting judged. The 10% is still going to be a hard goal. And the reason why we can't build these new trails is because of the 10%. And this is getting extreme as well. So I had the planning consultants, like from the district council, come over and be like, look, this is what I want to do. What's the chance of me getting it through? And they got distracted and they said, what's that over there? I said, oh, it's a tarp. They said, what's the tarp for? And I said, oh, we have like this really nice baby group, and they're using the woodland as like a forest bathing site. It's like a mental well-being meditation area. They're there for an hour a week. I said, and the tarp just goes in the back and goes home. And this planning lady from the council said, well, you haven't got permission for that tarp. And I thought, whoa, we can't do anything nice anymore without having a piece of paper that says we can do it. And I said, right, I'm going to go down to Riverside and Stourport, and I'm going to go to the local park, and anybody with a picnic blanket on the floor, I'm going to give them a planning application. It's that picky and that ridiculous when you're in a woodland that you can't even put a tarp on the floor for 90 minutes a week. So yeah, these are the massive challenges that we're up against and the battles that we're still fighting to do any kind of expansion. And this is alongside massive social impact. So on the first weekend we opened, I got home and I made a video to myself. And I said, I really want 1,000 riders in the first year. Wouldn't it be amazing to get 1,000 riders in this brand new bike park? By July 2024, so a year after we'd opened on that first birthday, we'd had over 5,000 riders in the woods. And it's just mind-boggling that even happened. And it's still growing and we're still getting new people through. And it's all ages. And this is where the social benefit comes in. Because we're fortunately on the edge of a housing estate. And it's probably the closest bike park to any housing estate. I guess Leeds Urban is very close as well. But so there's 2 high schools either side. The kids are coming through all the time. They come through on their like school bike and then they come back on their mountain bike. And the police are saying that we've reduced crime rate. Like they visually seen a reduction in crime rate. And the school teachers are saying that now that we exist, it's easier for them to reach the hard to reach kids. Because they talk about bikes and they're like, how's it going at the woods? So that's been really beneficial. And we're getting the kids off the housing estates where mountain biking isn't so accessible. Because let's be honest, it's become this really well-to-do sport. Burlish back in the 90s would have been anybody that could scramble a bike together. And now it's Range Rovers, it's full-on full suspension bikes, it's full-face helmets and all the Troiley and all the Fox and da-da-da-da-da. And I feel like we've really blocked out what mountain biking was for. And it's for kids and it's for the child within us. And so we're trying to get these kids out on bikes. And it's lovely that when you sit at the top of that trailhead, it doesn't matter where you've turned up with a Carrera, with a Canyon or a Santa Cruz or something out of your uncle's skip. As long as it's got at least one working brake, preferably a back brake if you only got one, you can ride your bike there. And we do look after the kids that turn up with these rough bikes, and we do try and like touch them up a bit and get them safe to run. But it doesn't matter what bike you've turned up on, everybody is welcome. And that's something that the community itself has driven and put into the system. So we never hear the kids saying, your bike's shit or anything like that. It's just, go on, mate, see what you can do, sort of thing. And it's lovely. And we've got like free helmet hire for people that need it. And we know the kids that come through that aren't deeper in the mountain bike industry and aren't really into the sport as much as some others, because they rock that helmet and they almost look like they're in trouble before they've even met us. And so our trick is to like get you into the clubhouse, tell you that a piece of cake has gone stale and so you can have it for free. And then it's our way of being like, look, we're adults and we are running a formal facility, but we're here for you and we want you to be part of this site. And if you can't afford your membership, tell us and we'll sort it out. Like, we don't want to discourage anyone from coming. We want it to be a community site where everybody is welcome. And now that we've got that community built up, we are doing our best to welcome more of the less affluent kids. And we're doing it with the schools and with the police so that we know that we're attracting people that really need it and really need that extra support. So alongside us wanting new trails, we also want some more storage. We want to do a bike hire scheme as well. But obviously, from my knowledge, every BMX track that's had hire bikes had them stolen at some point. So that's another barrier that I'm trying to get into at the minute and see if that's feasible financially and not going to get robbed. So yeah, that's Burlish in a nutshell. It took 2 years and 9 months to develop, to get it from here's a woodland to we're opening the doors in the bike park. And the first 12 months have been exhausting, but what a journey. And I'm chuffed with it. And thank you if you've come. Thank you for being here and taking an interest. Any questions, fire them at me. I feel like I've been there and done it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Hannah. That's brilliant. Really, yeah, it really gives us a flavour for the journey you've been on. While everyone is thinking of their questions, which I'm sure they are, Louise has got a question. Louise, just bear with me one sec. I'm going to ask a couple of questions myself first. So just give us a sense of scale, like how many football pitches or tennis courts is the overall woodland and what percentage of that woodland are the trails?
Okay, so the woodland is 12 acres or 6 hectares. I have no idea what that means in football pitches. If anyone does, shout out what a football pitch is in terms of acres. But yeah, it's 12 acres. The actual footprint of the trails, I mean, the areas itself is about 40% of the site, but within that are little pockets of greenery that hasn't got a trail on it. Even if it's 40%, I don't think it's even that. I think in the original plan, and this is where my bugbear is, I think they said you can have 40%, but I know we're not on 40%. But yeah, these local authorities, they change the goalposts all the time. So yeah, I'd say about 40% is where our little footprint is, if that. There's so much scope left, but we can't. 4 football pitches. Thanks, Tony P. There we go.
Brilliant. And then obviously you mentioned that you've been running your own charity for 4 years before you did this. Can you give us a bit more context on that? I mean, what was the charity doing? Was it related?
Yes, so Open Trail. So basically, I was working for Transport for West Midlands, trying to get kids to cycle to school. And I was then selected for the GB cycling team to race 4 across at the World Championships. And I saw these coaches working with these kids at these schools, and I thought, I can do a better job than them, which is only a bit rude. But I knew that I could, and we did this like bike mechanics course. And through like my enthusiasm, my input, we actually got 2 of the kids back in full-time education because they only turned up for this bike mechanics course. And then it was like, this is a big deal that these kids are now going to sit and do their exams because they've learned some stuff about bikes. So I convinced my employer to put me through British cycling coaching courses and through MIAS level 2 and Forest School as well. And Forest School isn't biking, it's about getting kids out in the woods and lighting fires in a good way and making dens and enjoying being in the woodland. So yeah, I convinced them to do that. And then I was like, right, I'm off now. And I'm going to do this by myself. I did work for them for another year. They did know my plan was to go self-employed and set up my own charity. So I started it up. And we worked with, I think, 10 schools in the first year, just going in and we focused on learn to ride lessons. So teaching kids how to ride a bike for the first time. And these are kids that have got barriers. So maybe they've got dyspraxia or autism or other kind of physical or mental difficulties that make riding a bike hard. Or, you know, if a child has got to 10 and they've not learned to ride a bike yet, something else has happened and something else is going on. So we work with those 10, 11-year-olds that can't do their bike ability yet, so cycle proficiency, and they can't ride a bike. And as a kid, riding a bike is a massive deal. It's the first time you control a vehicle all by yourself. And when you're 10 and you're sat in a class of other 10-year-olds, you think you're the only person in the whole class that can't ride a bike. And then we drag you out and they go, you can't do it either. I never knew. And it's a massive confidence boost. It's a massive route to their independence and they travel by themselves. And so that's what started it. And now we teach about 1,500 children a year how to ride a bike for the very first time. They've got all sorts of background stuff. So we work with a lot of SEND schools. So that's special education needs and disabilities. We work with a lot of low income and deprived schools. And a lot of what stands out a lot, and I have to praise it carefully, is Asian girls. So if we take a school in Kidderminster, which is a very, very white population, we take a school in Dudley or Birmingham, which has got a much more ethnic diverse population, it would teach us the same amount of time to teach an Asian boy to a white British boy, but it would take the same amount of time to teach an Asian girl as a child who has got dyspraxia or autism, because their physical literacy development isn't as strong. And we're experiencing that diversion a lot. And so we target those areas as well to make sure that we give these girls the biggest impact we can to get them feeling independent and riding their bikes. So that's what Open Trail does. It was just me back in the early years, and now there's 10 cycle coaches, there's 10 members of staff linked to the bike path. And yeah, we're working at over 80 schools a year. So it's really great. And we've got through Burlish, we do 5,000 riders, and through Open Trail, we do another 5,000 riders. So it's become its own beast, and it's marvellous.
That's amazing. Cool. I've got loads more questions, but I'm sure I'll get my chance. Louise, your turn.
Hiya. Yeah, really amazing, like these sort of enthusiasm and passion. Thank you for that. I'm sort of more equally daunted and equally encouraged by what you're saying, Hannah, because I'm trying to do something similar, well, not similar, but create a bike park in Richmond in North Yorkshire. And it was really sort of a case of going as far as we could, just to see what would happen. And we've got given some land. And my experience is more in the planning and project management side, but not in the fundraising side. So a few of the things you were saying about fundraising, we've joined with a local Richmond CIC, but they've only been running for a year now. And from what you're saying, that you need sort of 4 years accounts to apply for some of the grants, and they'll only give you 20% of the total annual revenue. That sounds quite daunting. And how do we get around those sort of aspects of fundraising, really?
So you don't need 4 years. They normally stipulate 1 year. But obviously, if it's only been going for 1 year, then it's not seen as being as sustainable and secure as an organisation that's going for longer. So I'd recommend, obviously you can't just make 4 or 5 years come out of thin air. It takes 4 or 5 years to happen. But if you can join up with other organisations, that's a massive boost. So if you look at, if you say South Yorkshire, if you look at the impact of Leeds North Yorkshire, sorry. You look at the impact of Leeds, which is obviously not a million miles away. That massively went over Sports England's expectations in terms of its footfall. I mean, the whole site is huge and great, gets a lot of cyclists in, but Sport England saw that as almost a flagship for their Place to Ride fund. It was one of the first ones that got access to the funding and developed from it. But if you can look at that and see the footfall from them, then see the footfall from us, which is again exceeded all expectations, and you can show the social impact through examples of those projects. And if you can link up with other charities and organisations, then that will give you that financial backing, because you've just got to prove to these funders that you are sustainable and that you're going to withstand all the challenges and all the barriers that you're going to come across. We managed to get around the 20% thing purely because Sports England believed in me, and that sounded really big-headed, but obviously my enthusiasm comes across, and they just thought, yeah, this is the horse to back. So we got really lucky in that respect. So if you can get that enthusiasm and that go-getter leading the kind of collab organisations that you can draw together, then you're more likely to get it. The only downside now is that Places to Ride has ended. It doesn't mean that Sport England won't do it again. It doesn't mean that they haven't got other things going on in cycling. A big thing in cycling funding-wise is Section 106. So this is what local authorities generate from building houses. So most of the pump tracks that you find around the country are funded by Section 106, and that's because when planners get funding from getting planning permission on their land, the value of the land increases, and then the local authority wants to tap into that funding, and then the local authority has certain objectives that they need to fund. So it's all about giving back to the community.
Yeah, social corporate responsibility. Yeah.
It's not that. It's different to that, because that's what businesses do. Okay. This is purely through the planning process and purely through building a new thing. And it's all about how when you build a new housing estate or whatever it might be, that has repercussions on education, hospitals, infrastructure. And so they've got to get around the infrastructure. And a pump track is a brilliant way because it's great for community. And it, like, once it's done, it needs very little maintenance. So if you can kind of plug into that side of things, Section 106, you need to get in touch with your local planning department to find out what Section 106 they've got. And again, that can take a few years because it's also got to get, I forget what the other section is called. It's something like a Section 103 or something like that. And that's a list of objectives that the local authority have got. You need to kind of get yourself on that list. But if you can look, and this is where the planning stuff comes in, you look at your local authority town plan. So they'll have like a 10-year development plan. And if you can look at, right, they want more green space, they want more parks, they want more physical activity, and you can put on those goals and you can say how your Richmond bike park makes those goals easier for the local authority.
Just one more thing. So the 290k spend, was that including the cafe toilets as well?
Yes, so that was literally everything. So like for you, the land was donated to us, but I mean, we did get a lot of help in terms of we had a lot of volunteers doing the cladding of the container and the insulation and the lining and all of that. We got free electricians on board, free flooring installation on board. And that's what the crowdfunder brings out as well. It's that you get a load of people saying, this sounds amazing. I'm a carpenter. How can I help you? And so people like that are fantastic. And that's another benefit of the crowdfunder is that you learn who else wants to put into it. So it's not just you.
Just trying to figure out how to put the actual clap emojis to some of the.
Right. Well, there you go. So at least you found out you were clapping Hannah. So that's nice.
Definitely. While I'm talking, just a big shout out to Hannah. I'm sure that you guys can see that she's a massive driving force, and like for me personally, I've had the unique and a fortunate time to be with her and actually do some coaching and actually seeing her out there in the field. And she does make a massive
that was me asking you to start your video.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, thank you. It's all right. The screen went off this time. Yeah, just a big driving force, and this has just been a big a trophy really for her to show what Hannah can do. So yeah, Hannah, big well done. You're awesome, and just keep doing all this magic of what you keep doing. It's changing lives out there. So yeah, well done.
Oh, Adam, you silly sausage. Thanks, mate.
You got the sausage in, well done.
Yeah, so Adam sent me some words how to get into presentation. So I had to get in banger, banana, epic, and sausage. So I've completed
Oh, you've done it.
4 points to me.
Brilliant. Cool. Well, look, while other people think of their questions, I'm going to go back to my very long list. So just, I suppose, trying to pick up the conversation where we left it and focusing on the same things before we move into different areas. But you talked about trust funds. I imagine most people don't know what you mean there. So perhaps could you just sort of explain that a bit more?
Okay, so the funding world is massive. So there are funds literally for anything and everything coming out of everywhere. And trust funds, from what I understand it, is basically when you've had somebody who maybe back in the day has had loads of money from land and investments, etc., and then they want to put that money to good use. So one of our biggest ones, which was £50,000, was from Wolfson Foundation or the Wolfson Trust. And again, that is like a person who owned loads of land and was making money and now want to put to good use, as I said. Another one, though, is there's a few sort of regional things that are quite big. So Severn Trent Water and all the other water companies around the country have a community fund to give back to their region. Another one is the waste disposal people. So our local one is Biffa, and there's obviously, you probably know who your local one is, but they've always got massive funds as well. And I mean, we're talking about big capital operations, big capital costs in terms of infrastructure, etc., for building these cycling facilities. So it's always good to, if there's a maximum fund of 50k, you go in for 20k. You know, you don't go in for the whole amount. If a maximum fund is 5k, you go in for 2k, unless you know you're going to get it, because, like, you know, 5k to a £5,000 max grant is a lot of money. 5k to a £50,000 max grant isn't a lot of money, so you're more likely to get success with them. But there's loads available. I have written so many funding applications for whether it's the Open Trail Learn to Ride stuff or Burlish Bike Park capital costs, that you just get into rhythm of it and get pretty good at it the more you do it. I mean, we got a lot of rejections, but to be fair, Burlish didn't get many rejections. Burlish got a lot of support. But Open Trail in general, we've had rejections along the way, and then you learn what you're doing and you get more success. God, Burlish was getting support from everybody. It seemed that everybody just got it and understood it and could see. Another big plug for us was that it was a sustainable way to run the charity, because a big thing within running charities and other social enterprises is that you want to be financially sustainable. And Open Trail was asking for a lot of grant funding all year round, these Learn to Ride programs. But now that we've got a till, our own till and our own sports facility, we are generating funding, which means that I don't have to fill out grant applications anymore, because Burlish not only funds Burlish, but can also fund some of the Learn to Ride activities that we do. So it's a real win-win for everybody. And a lot of the grant funds love it when you can say, I'm going to apply for this once and I'm never going to need to apply for it again. So yeah, trust funds and funding, etc.
Cool, thank you. I think that's pretty clear. Just so everyone knows, there is a funding for trail associations and bike parks page on the Trail Hub, where you can find out, you find links to all these sorts of things, where you can find out where your local trusts are and stuff like that. You know, as Hannah mentioned, there tends to be, you know, some trusts that are very local to you. It will obviously depend on where you are. But yeah, like power stations, whether they be nuclear or conventional or wind or solar, usually have to have a community fund to give back to their local community. Again, the sort of waste disposal sites, the big waste disposal companies, again, have to have trust funds to give back to their local communities around the waste sites. Power companies, as Hannah mentioned, there's all sorts. It will depend on where you live, but it's worth putting the time in. And those sort of local funds, my perception is at least, is that they're a sort of an easier win. The sort of the national funds that anyone can apply to obviously get hundreds of thousands of applications each year, and I think it's harder to get access to their funds. Whereas the local funds, there's obviously less competition for them. It's only the local area competing for them. So, they're probably easier to get funds from. But yeah, all the details on the Trail Hub on the funding page. So yeah, if you're interested to find out more, that's where you go to. Hannah, you mentioned, and don't forget, you're all meant to be thinking of your questions, by the way. But while you are, next one. So obviously it sounds like you built momentum through the process, right? And got the local community on board, not just the local mountain biking community, but the whole local community on board. You talked about the local radio station, you talked about local building companies giving their time for free and resources free, which is amazing. How did you manage that? Obviously a lot of it is down to your enthusiasm, but it can't just be all of that. There must have been a process you went through.
It's just organic. It just happens. People like supporting good things. And to be fair, it wasn't always pleasant because, the first time you launch an idea on Facebook, you get those really poxy community groups just want to whinge and moan about everything. We had a lot of that. And I had a lot of, it will never happen. There's no way she can make this work. Like, nothing good ever happens in this town. This is impossible. It's so unrealistic. And that just fuels me, like small woman complex. This is just, it's going to happen, this is the force of me. So, but at the same time, I am a massive people pleaser in a bad way. And it really cut me deep when people would criticize it. And so I had to kind of get over that. And I actually developed like an anxiety tick off the back of it, which wasn't nice. But yeah, so it wasn't easy going public, but you get way more support than you get negativity. It's just that sometimes we listen to negativity before we listen to all the support, and we take that on board a lot more than the supportive stuff. But literally, the more I put out the crowdfunder and the more I explained what I was doing, the more people got invested and got involved. And we all know the mountain bike community is incredible. And as much as you can have some talented riders out there, everybody's got a day job as well. And so that guy who rides every Saturday is also an electrician, or he's also a carpenter, or he's a roofie, or whatever. And so yeah, there's just talent, and you have to just sort of put yourself out there and see who flocks in, or ask for it. It's like, we've got a list of email addresses now, and if someone says @treesurgeon.com, I'm like, hey, do you like the bike park? Do you want to come and help with this tree? It'd be great. So yeah, people want to give back. Look at what we're all doing now.
Cool. Okay, thank you. All right, we've now got 2 questions. I'll let Ian go first.
So hi, Hannah. I was a few minutes late, but sounds what you've got is amazing, and we'll definitely be trying to come across from Cambridgeshire side to come and have a ride. Got a couple of questions for you. I was, as I say, a few minutes late. So how did you get access to the land, and do you actually have a formal lease on the land, or some form of formal ownership? And then that linked to your comments about funding. Did you need the lease or charitable status to actually be able to make the applications? I've been involved in football groups where we've had charitable donations or funding, and it's taken 5 or 6 years to get things resolved. But the key thing to release the money was to actually have a formal lease in place.
Yeah, so with the land was actually given to us. So it was a straight up, I don't want this land anymore, you can have it. And I think the benefit of being a charity in that was that for the guy that now runs a lot of industrial units, it's a tax write-off because we're a registered charity. So that is, get that land evaluated and then write that off your costs at the end of the year. But also what's great about being a charity and having the land is that being a charity, we've got an asset lock. So anything that gets donated to us, anything at all isn't owned by me, isn't owned by the charity trustees, it's owned by the objectives of the charity, which means that whatever happens to myself or the trustees or to Burlish Bike Park, that woodland will always theoretically be for the benefit of local young people and their independence, their confidence. In terms of the funding side, there's way more grants and trusts available to register charities than there are to CICs or constituted organisations or sports groups. But we've got the actual land ownership, passing that over and getting all solicitors involved in that, that's taken a long time. So we did have like a temporary lease agreement for like 20 years, which was just a token thing to get to the paperwork stage. So yeah, you need that paper trail to say that you've got the lease. But yeah, we outright own it now.
That's great, thank you.
Cool. And then Louise, you've got another question?
Yeah, did you, regarding the funding then and the planning application, how far did you go with your funding application, grants, applying for that sort of thing before you got planning permission?
So it all depends on the funder. So because the Places to Ride fund understood that planning was an obstacle, but they also understood how long it took because they were building places to ride. So I think at stage one, because it was like a two-stage process, stage one, we had the pre-planning application approved and the guidance, and then we needed the stage two funding to fund all the conditions of that pre-planning. So we had to get an ecologist, an arboriculturalist, and archaeologist, and they want money. So we had to get Sport England to pay to get the planning permission. But then when it came to the trust funds that weren't necessarily their whole ethos isn't about building bike parks, you know, they're doing all sorts of things. They wanted the planning permission. So we were really fortunate the Place to Ride was available when we were building. But there's other capital projects out there that do it. I think Severn Trent Water, they wanted planning permission in place. We didn't get BIFA funding, which is the waste disposal guys, but if we did, they'd have wanted planning evidence that it was approved. So yeah, it's a good one to get it in place, but it doesn't mean that you can't start looking and start applying. It's just knowing where the limitation is on whether you've got approval or not.
Thanks.
Me again. How about then? So going back to like the beginning of the process, right? There were already jumps there, Hannah. Why did you need to rebuild them?
Oh, they'd gone rotten. Like they used to be absolutely massive, and then they'd sunk and had been water eroded so much that they'd gone a lot smaller than what they were. And then kids don't like to dig away from the jumps, do they? They like to build a big hole next to the jump because that's the dirt that they've used for it. So there was just hazards everywhere. And it was brilliant. Like the whole community of the kids being there was fantastic. But it wasn't safe. And as I said, it was literally, Hannah, you make it a bike path or I'm going to have to bulldoze it. There wasn't sort of two ways about it. And if I hadn't have taken it on, it wouldn't exist anymore. And the potential was that it's then going to end up being another housing estate. So yeah, there was no real two ways about it.
But there was nothing you couldn't sort of take some or any of what was there before. You had to. There was none of it you could use, basically.
Oh no, we did. Yes, we basically followed the lines that used to be there. So the trail names like Main and Moto and Wishbone. I said to the kids when we built it, I put on Instagram and I said to loads of local kids, right, we've got new trails. What should we call them? And they were like, we stick to the original names. You're not calling them anything new. And I was like, okay, we'll do that then. So that's what they are. And they follow, because part of the biodiversity net gain stuff and the planning permission was that you can put tracks where there's already been tracks. You're not allowed to put tracks where there aren't tracks currently. So we follow the lines that are already there. And Mains and Moto are exactly the same what they've always been. Wishbone is longer and bigger than it used to be. Project 5 is called Project 5 because the original site back in the 90s was called Project 5, and then Tables is Tables because of the line of tables. So yeah, we've literally followed what was already in existence, and we got a lot of the kids on board, because right at the start of it, when it's kind of word had got round that the landowner's given the woods to this woman, and I was this scary woman that nobody knew. And then I went and met some of the kids, because I worked out the word had got round. I went to like say, hi, this is me, I'm the scary woman. And I was like, what do you want? What do you want me to build? And that's how it started. So the kids were literally telling me what they wanted, and they stopped getting upset then and were like, she was all right. So yeah, the kids kind of, they had a lot of input. And we put out, before the crowdfunder went out, before anything actually started, like I say, I designed it, but a big survey went out to be like, if you were going to build a bike park, what would you put in it? And then that has fed into what we've done. And even now, like, I've got another survey out being like, right, we want to get the diggers in. What do you want to improve? What do you want to change? So as much as it's built, there's always adjustments to make, and always be like, right, what doesn't work? What works really well? What do you want different?
Cool. And you also talked about during not the planning process, but the building process based on the planning you did, that did you have to submit like an actual sort of diagram of the trails where every berm and every tabletop was?
Not as such. So we had to do, it was more like a bird's eye view sort of thing. So it was a bird's eye view and then like a cross section. So it was a case of, here's a line of jumps with some vague measurements on, but then we didn't want to put on, it was like, this will be roughly 3 meters, this will be roughly 4 meters. Because if you put direct measurements on, they've got every right to come in and say, that's actually 2 centimeters longer than they said it was going to be, so you need to change it. So I was as vague as I could be while still explaining what we were doing. I didn't have to have some amazing CAD drawing of every trail. It was basically just a line being like, this is the jumps, this one's got some berms on it. Whereas, like, you can quite happily go and spend £10,000 on some CAD drawer to go and draw you some beautiful drawings, but you don't need to. And as the planning process went on, I went more pen and paper and a ruler and a pencil than fancy posh drawings, because they were just asking for ridiculous, where are the bins going? It's like, they're going here. How many trees are there? There's 3. Can you draw a picture of the trees, please? I'm like, no, I can't. Okay, here's some little squiggly, they look like hands coming out of the ground, my trees did. I'm like, I'm not paying some CAD guy to draw that. So yeah, there's so many ways that you can do it, and it doesn't have to be really official all the time.
Yeah, that seems to be the case. I've again, on the Trail Hub, there's a page where we've got a resource where there's as many different planning applications for different bike parks and mountain bike trails as possible, because obviously they're all mostly on local planning authority websites, so you can download them. I'm not sure if yours is on there or not, but
we followed Northampton's demo when we did ours, which is great.
But but different people say different approaches, and obviously I get what you're saying. Is like, you want to take the most vague approach you can get away with, which gives you the most freedom during the build phase. But you were sort of saying, even then, you didn't have enough freedom during the build phase. That still restricted you a bit too much.
Yeah, it was purely the restriction of, you can only go where trails have already been. You can't go treading new land. And that's where, when I want to put in these mulch jumps and this new red trail, they're like, no, because no one's rode there before. And I'm like, well, you can't tell anymore because we changed everything. But they used to ride there. Like, this used to be a patch you just don't know because everything's overgrown, because we've limited where people can now build. So it's I think every site is unique and everyone's going to have their own unique problems. But like you say, having this database of planning applications can really get us through an awful lot. If I met with Tony at Northampton and was like, right, what issues did you have and what am I going to avoid? And I found their planning application. I was like, right, okay, so this is what a document looks like. I need to copy this document. And if you come in, when you go in with, like, when you fill out the planning application, it's like, okay, are you a consultant or are you the individual? And if you go in as an individual, you get leniency than if you go in as a consultant. So me just putting Hannah Escott on the application of this address was way better than saying, I'm this person of this consultancy and we live at this fancy office in Birmingham. So it meant that the advisors on the side were a lot more lenient towards, okay, Hannah, that's great, but you just need to add this bit in and add that bit in and to make it more official. So you don't have to know everything.
And how, actually, out of interest, how long did the planning application process take?
Ages. Way longer than it should have taken. They put on these silly things when you send in a form and saying, we will get back to you in 6 weeks. And then it's like 12 weeks later and they're still not back to you. So the pre-planning, that went off in February 21, I think. It went off in December 21 and we were meant to get it back by February 21. We didn't get it back till April 21, which then delayed the full planning. I sent off the full planning, which was after, so dormice. Bloody dormice. So you have to do 18 months of surveys to make sure that there's no mice, no dormice in your woodland. But there's no dormice outside the River Severn. So they were never going to be there, but we had to do it. It's got to tick this box for the local authority. So that took 18 months. So the full planning didn't get submitted until it took 2 years to do that because of the dormice. So yeah, that was a big job. So there's loads of little challenges that just take time. And then you've got bird nesting season and badger mating season and all this sort of stuff there. It's like you end up with 3 weeks build time because otherwise it's too ecologically sensitive for anything else to happen.
Well, thank God you didn't find any dormice.
Literally, yeah.
Okay. Let's not put people off, though. Look how happy Hannah is, having achieved what she's achieved, right? It's worth the effort.
It is. It genuinely is. It's awesome. Like, I rock up to this woodland and I go, this was just a picture in my head and now it's real. And then you've got the kids saying, watch me do this, watch me do that. And you're like, yeah, man, this is sick. And people talk about it. And the kids have got their own little WhatsApp groups and stuff. And they're just, it's a cornerstone of the community. And I can't go to the supermarket without going, you're the bike park lady. It's like, I just want to buy some beans. So yeah, it is magical and wonderful, and it's my own little baby. And then I still get pictures coming up on Facebook or whatever, being like, 2 years ago, this was a pile of brambles, and now there's 20 cars in it. So yeah, it's a learning journey. It's a lot of work, but it literally feels like I got a free master's degree out of this because it's an incredible journey. You never know where it's going to end. And I've met some wonderful, wonderful people through it. And I would not change it for the world. I would turn back the clock and go through all of it, even the highway consultant guy inspector again.
There's another revenue stream for you, is that they had a Burlish bike park MBA course that you can launch and charge for, right? But talking about revenue streams, though, like you hinted at the answers to this, but just to ask the question anyway, is you're obviously charging entry fees to the park. What talk us through that decision? Obviously, it could have been free and more people could have had access.
Yeah, it increases ownership by charging membership. I mean, we have to make it sustainable. Yes, it's a charity, but things have to be able to run. Otherwise, it will just go into disrepair and never exist, and we'd have to ask for more and more funding. So our fees are £5 for somebody under 18, £3 for a balanced bike rider, £7 for an adult. And then it's £20 for under 18 for the year and £30 for over 18 for the year. And then it's £50 for family of four for the year. So we must be the cheapest paid for bike park in the country. If a child comes up to us and says, I haven't got any money, we are not going to turn them away. Crack on. We've had brothers of riders turn up and say, look, I'm a bit short of cash at the moment. It's like, just pay us when you can. If people are able to say, look, it's a financial barrier at the minute, then we have never, ever turned a rider away. Unless their bike's been dangerous, we've never turned them away. But it keeps the dust going on the floor. It keeps repairs going. It keeps the wheelbarrows moving, etc. And that the membership program is really beneficial in terms of the kids feel like they're part of something, and then they want to give back. Like, they'll come down and say, can I take the litter picker up for half an hour? Or can I borrow the leaf blower for a bit? Can I borrow the broom to get rid of that puddle? They want to invest in it because they recognise that it's theirs. So it's more than just a financial contribution. It's buying into something and being part of something. And then a lot of people are like, this is way too cheap. Why are you not charging us more money? And then we explain it's so that it's accessible to everybody. And then we've had other people say, well, so can I fund somebody else's membership? I'm like, absolutely. And so we'll have adults put in an extra 20 quid to pay for a kid's membership. And then I can say to them later on, you've paid for Joe Bloggs' membership. I don't actually give their real name because you're not allowed to. This is their background. This is their bike. Thank you. They're loving it. So it's brilliant because then it's just a win-win for everybody. And then we take donations. So we've got a little charity shop within the cafe. So people drop off shoes and helmets and jackets and trousers. And a pair of mountain bike trousers are like under 50 quid, aren't they? Stupid. It's like you can pick them up. You can have them for a £5. Like, crack on. So and then all the coffees and stuff. That it's £1 for a portion of chips because that's what the teenagers want. It's £3 for coffee because that's what the adults want. So we try and take from the rich to feed the poor in a way, so that the kids can come and have a cheap day out, but mom's still paying an average price for a coffee. So and everybody gets it. Everybody gets it. That's how it works, and that's what keeps the place running. So we have never ever had any complaints on pricing other than this is too cheap. How are you still in existence? So yeah, there's benefits to charging sometimes, and the car park's free.
Cool. I've got a couple of questions off the back of that, but just obvious one, just to be absolutely clear. So if you pay your annual membership at those very low rates, you don't have to pay a day rate as well.
No,
right. There's only if you're not, you have to pay on the day.
That's right. Yeah.
Right, yeah. And then the cafe, is that making you money or losing your money, or?
Oh, so that's making us money, yeah. So when I did, it was all volunteer-led the first 6 months. Then I did the 6 months accounts. And I was like, okay, coffee works. This is paid. I can actually meet minimum wage now. And it's literally, you pay people nothing, you pay them £11.44 an hour. There is no middle ground on that. And yeah, so I think last year we made £12,000 over all our costs. So all it has to do is wash its face, but it made a little bit more. So that's great. And it's the paninis and the chips and the pot noodles and stuff that help make that happen. And again, it's all really budget.
Do you literally sell pot noodles?
Yeah, well, obviously we put hot water in it, but then there's one kid who comes over from Stourbridge who brings his own pot noodle for us to put water in it for him. And you're like, this is cheeky, but you do it because it's like, mate, fair play.
I point out you could have said sausages at lots of points during this conversation in the last 5 minutes, especially when you're in the supermarket. Okay, so and you're actually making enough not just to maintain and develop the park moving forward, but actually to fund your other charitable, the other side of the charity.
Yeah,
which is amazing.
That's also because, on the funding side, once you're established, people know that you're a charity, other money starts coming in. So Biffa, who we didn't get the big money from, they were brutal. They're not nice to apply for, but you have to try them. They had some sort of money pot, which was because their staff hadn't had as many sick days they budgeted for. They had this like £4,000, and I literally got a phone call from this guy whose lad rides at the bike park and just said, "Do you want £4,000?" I'm like, yeah, we could do loads with that. Brilliant, thank you. And so that check pops in. Then there's a local councillor that was like, I've underspent this year. Do you want 1,200 quid? I'm like, yeah, brilliant, fantastic. We'll do this with it. So once you're established, random pots of money start coming in. And our biggest one, Talbot Transport, they're like the local quarry company. So, and his son comes and rides with us. And he says, look, I recognise that a lot of your kids don't have very much. So how can we help you? And if I want a load of dust, like 20 ton of dust, I just phone up and he drops it off. Like that's £500 worth of resources right there. It's incredible. On Friday, he's going to tell me that he's got 100 ton of soil for me so I can mellow out one of the landings and the jumps. It's just like, once you're up and running, people want to help. It's an insane community where people want you to do well.
That's brilliant. I'm also on the edge of tears here. It's such a wonderful story. Let's bring it down a bit. biodiversity net gain. uh, I mean, just that, because this is a topic that's come up a few times about whether trails are good for the environment or bad for the environment. Could you know, can we collectively make landowners appreciate mountain bike trails on their land more by doing more around making trails themselves biodiverse? And a lot of that is based on thinking that a lot of trails, not necessarily yours, are in sort of these monoculture forestry applications, which are actually like ecological deserts. And actually, if you could, plant local species and introduce other, along the trail corridor, potentially you could do lots. I mean, I presume you're trying to make use of every inch of land in your claim about biodiversity net gain, and actually going right up to the edge of the trails with that, or not?
Yeah, so there's several ways of doing it in terms of how it creates benefit, in terms of biodiversity. And what we're finding is that wasps are making their homes, like kind of ground wasps, if that's even a thing, in the jumps. Because they like that. We've got really sandy soil and they like that sandy soil, and they like the compaction on the soil. So, I mean, we're surface, so the trails themselves don't do it, but where the sides of the jumps have been compacted, you can see all the little holes where these bees and wasps have started making their homes in the side of the jumps, and they don't bother people. Like, they're not stingy wasps or stingy bees. They're like a really funny type. Like, they look different to the ones that you're like, oh my God, go away. So yeah, that's a really good thing. And then what you want in ecology is like a change. So if you've got, they call it an edge. So you have this ecological edge, which could be the edge of the trail, so the edge of the bare soil, and then the woodland. So edges are valuable, especially when you've got like a meadow with a load of brambles and then a woods or whatever it might be. So you could create an edge with trails, which then obviously gives you that biodiversity net gain. And it is like, biodiversity is incredibly important. Like, as much as it annoys me because I can't build bike tracks, like, I think we've lost 70% UK biodiversity since the 1970s. Like, it is insane how much we've lost. I mean, I'm sure you can see in your own lifetimes, like, how few bugs end up on the windscreen of your car, and that's because we've built so much stuff and got rid of so many insects. So it is massively important. But yeah, it's like you say, we need to find a way of working together on it. And also, the metric is brand new. So they only made it law this year. So the metric, as in the way they measure net gain, works really well for housing estates and industrial development and road networks. It doesn't work very well for a little trail in a woodland. So we don't have the measurement in place yet that works for us. So we're kind of damned if we do and damned if we don't, in a way. But yeah, I mean, the downside for us with the whole bee and wasp thing is that we're surfaced, but on the meadows next door to us, which is a grassland, and it's got the same biodiversity value as like coral reef systems because of this acidic soil that it's on. They wanted to put bike tracks on there because they wanted to compact the soil and create those habitats that we're talking about, and then move the trails to create more of those habitats. So then you'd let that one trail recover and green over again, and then you'd have that bare soil again. But obviously with Burlish, it's surfaced and it is staying where it is. But if you were able to have that flexible movement, which you can do on golf courses, for example, obviously there's a few bike paths on golf courses now, then there is potential for that. It's just a surfacing thing because Sport England wanted us to surface everything.
Why do they want you to surface everything? Just to give it more longevity? Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, so that your costs over the long term are less. And it's, I mean, jumps that run in January and February, like, it's brilliant. We're busier in the winter than we are in the summer.
Okay, fair enough. I'm coming to the end of my long list of questions. So if anyone else has got any other questions, please ask away. But I suppose just to widen it out from a Q&A to Hannah to more of a conversation. Tony, you guys also had Places to Ride funding, right?
That's right. Yes, we did. The situation was a lot different to Hannah's because the land was owned by the council, and the council did all the planning permission for us, and arranged consultants to do the environmental surveys. I think we fell short, like Hannah did, of the biodiversity net gains, but there is a 30-year environmental plan that is meant to be upheld by Northamptonshire Sport. Various grass cutting and bramble hacking and tree planting targets to meet. But yeah, the places to ride, as Hannah said, the grant application was in 2 stages. You had your interim. If stage 1, just make sure that it was okay to go, and then stage 2 was the big application form, which I'm sure Hannah remembers well. But as I say, we did have in the second for the second side of the application, we did have a substantial amount of help from planning consultants funded by the Borough Council. They actually stuck another £250,000 in. Our initial request from Places to Ride was £250,000, and the council agreed to match that. Obviously, it was a match-funded scheme, and then they put another £250,000 in to cover the planning costs, which were wooden dollars to them because it was all internal costs. But
interesting. They're basically saying they were giving you money, but then basically all that money was going back to their different department, right?
The majority of it, yeah.
Right.
The
Okay.
majority of it went back into the council. But so all the press releases said £750,000 spent, and 500,000 of that was, well, 250,000 was from Places to Ride, and the other 250,000 went back into the council, effectively. But like Hannah said, it took us about 2 years from start to finish, and we had some help from Bike Track along the way. They drew us some free plans to start with, just rough sketches over the 40 acres, which got stuck as the plan, unfortunately. When there were lines on maps, and that got stuck. The features weren't on there. As Hannah said, we just had sketches of features. These features will appear on these lines at some point. And the planners accepted that. They wanted it all nailed down to start with, and we said, well, we can't until we open the ground up. We don't know what's going to be there, and so we'll have to put the features where the ground accepts it. And eventually, they didn't know what a bike park was. They hadn't got a clue what we were looking to build, and eventually they sort of took our word for it that that's the way these things happened. Again, and you know, Hannah said it as well. Leeds Urban Bike Park was the figurehead, and we played on that quite strongly and used that as a benchmark. And I think as things went on, the builds, Leeds was the first one, but without doing it any disservice, it's probably not the best one out of everything, and ours isn't, because the next one was better than ours, and the next one was better than ours, and as they went on, particularly the bigger builds I'm talking about, not particularly the small ones like Hannah's, but the Sandwell Parks and the Leamington Spa, New Bowl Common builds seem to have evolved from ours as well as the trail builders got used to it. But they were all really, really busy around that time as well.
Yeah, because of the places to ride for.
Because of the places to ride to, yeah. It's a fantastic learning curve to go through it all. And I had to quit the day job to get on with it.
Well, yeah, there's a lesson. You need to work on it. Yeah, you need to be available to work on it full time to make it happen, I suppose.
I was fortunate. I retired just before it all kicked off. So,
well, don't give too much away, because I'm sure I'll have you back on the call at some point in time to actually tell the whole story. But just on places to ride for both you and Hannah. I mean, was there any money that left out? You know, like, was there any money in the budget for future maintenance, or did you have to spend it all, like, on just on the build?
We had to spend it all. You had to, again, Hannah said that there had to be a business plan as part of the application. You had to show how you were going to take it on for the next 5 years. And in our case, it was the car parking.
Okay, cool. Adam's got a question. Hopefully not for Hannah, because it looks like she's dropped off the call.
No, it's not actually. It's for Tony. I didn't
Hi,
realise. Hi, okay. It's quite inspiring just to hear you talk about the kind of size of Northampton. I'm currently again going through the fifth time at Pooley Park, which is a council land. It's an old pit mound, basically. Robin, we've spoke about this before, quite some time back. I think it was when you first started all of this. But that seems to be coming back onto the agenda, so I will be talking to you at some point. But Tony, would I be able to kind of bump into you at some point, or could I talk to you and get some tips and hints about stuff? Yeah,
of course.
Okay. That's great. Thank you very much, mate.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
No problem at all.
Because it's all council run, so that's going to work just right with knowing the kind of steps basically of which to take. Because Marcus, who's the guy who's the council guy, again, he knows nothing about bikes and nothing about anything to do with trails or anything, but he's keen. So we're trying to keep him squeezed and trying to keep him on side, and we're going the actual right way.
Is he a councillor or an officer?
He's a officer, so he's the main one for the area, which is nice because every time there's been one come in, they've been there for 3 months and gone. So
Right.
it's quite interesting that this guy has come. We've also had a lovely lady who's just taken over the actual cafe as well. So that's up and running. So I'm trying to bounce it that if we can get the actual bike park in there, that's really going to help the cafe, which in turn is going to help everything else. And I'm bumping into Hannah tomorrow. So if we've got a big catch up, and I'll be racking her brains as normal about everything. But yeah, it'd be great to kind of bump into you, maybe grab a drink or something at some point.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So
Come and have a ride.
thanks, Dan. Yeah, definitely, mate. That'd be great. Thank you. Cheers.
So anyone else got any questions or not necessarily questions, but anything else they want to talk about? We're obviously having a conversation at the beginning about influencers and how responsible they are in some circumstances, driven by a particular video released yesterday about where they were just showing them scratching in some trails on the side of a hill, but without mentioning, you know, whether they had landowner permission or any of the issues associated with that. But people involved in that conversation are now off the call, so maybe we'll have that conversation another day. But look, if people don't have any other questions, which it doesn't look like anyone does, I will take the opportunity to thank Hannah so much. It was wonderful to hear the story. And amazing to see the level of effort and enthusiasm that's gone into it. Thank you so much for sharing it with us, and thank you all for being on the call. Thank you so much, and I'll see you all next month, hopefully, for the next call.